actual challenges to the state, challenges to the sovereignty of the state. And we're looking at these by example. So once again, you already know what devolution is. Political autonomy, just to refresh your memory on this, because this is the political review. Political autonomy is when a group of persons have self-governing ability. They're not under the control of a higher level of government, so they make their decisions. Sovereignty, the power of the governing body over all beings within the state, okay, without interference from outside sources. So a government has sovereignty, which is granted to it by the population, okay? And they have that sovereignty, which then protects them from outside influences, okay? All right, so we have some examples. These are examples of challenges to the sovereignty based upon these different topics of devolution. Now, keep in mind, some of these topics are going to overlap. You're going to have cultural topics overlapping with political topics and overlapping with developmental topics. It's how you argue it. It's how you point it out is what is going to make it for you, okay? So we have Catalonia and the Basque region. So Catalonia believes that they are a multicultural state or a multicultural area. They believe in multinationalism of Spain. Spain thinks that everyone should be speaking Castilian Spanish and that they should only be a state of one nation, and that is the Spanish. Catalonians don't agree. You also have another issue in Catalonia, which is wealth. This area tends to be very much more economically well off. The port, Barcelona is a major center. And so that creates even further tensions with areas that are not as affluent and obviously not as worldly as Catalonia is. So that is a economic but masking as an ethnic reason for challenging the sovereignty of Spain to try and become independent. The Basque region is another one. Keep in mind, you should have had during the cultural unit, maybe your teacher told you that the Basque is one of the only languages of Europe that there is no connection to any other language, that there's the Basque, the history of the Basque predates much of what we know about European civilization. Well, why is that? Well, I already told you they are physically, geographically kind of isolated right into here. And then on top of it, the Basque had for a while, there was an independence movement led by a terrorist organization, the ETA, where they were trying to break away and have the Basque become their own state, their own government. And their basis for this was culture, their language is different, and they predated Spain, so they didn't think that they really should be under the rule of Spain. So, but these are ethnic or cultural issues that then conflict into political conflicts that threaten the sovereignty of Spain. Next one is Belgium. All right, so Belgium, this little country in northwestern Europe, in the 1970s, to accommodate some of their cultural differences, they created communities. And these communities included a community of Flanders and a community of French and a community of German speakers and an area for the capital. So you had the community of Flanders, which is going to be, they speak Flemish, which is related to Dutch. And then the French are Walloon, and they in the south, bordering onto France. And then you have this little section of the Germans. All right, so that went along for a while, but it became administratively difficult for controlling all of the different levels of government that now were superimposed into areas by trying to distribute power into the communities. Okay, well, then in the 1980s, they then divided it into 3 geographic regions, which is what you have here in the bottom or over here in the big picture. 3 geographic regions. And these 3 geographic regions, once again, was Flanders, and then the capital region around Brussels, and then the Wallonia region, which included the Germans. So now the Germans no longer have their own area, but these regions are superimposed on top of the communities. So all they did was create another layer of government in there. And so it just makes things more complicated, but they have this nice, neat line where they divide it all, except for over here where they kind of flip back and forth. If you watched any of the CGP Gray videos on borders, this will be picked up in there, how the borders just go through different towns and buildings. Anyway, all right, the next one has to do with political challenges, and we use Canada to look at this, and this also overlaps with culture, is specifically language. So we have the area of Quebec, and Quebec for a while's official language was French, and then that was declared illegal, and so now their official language is Canada as a whole is a bilingual country, and so signs have to be in both languages in Quebec, both French and in English. All right, that's one area. By the way, we've had an FRQ on this, and it was a really good FRQ, and it dealt with Canada and the French-speaking area of Quebec. All right, the next area in Canada that presents a challenge to Canada's sovereignty is what they did with this region of Nunavut. And this was an area that was returned to its Aboriginal lands, 1999, and they were given autonomous rules. So they make their rules, and they don't have anyone telling them what they are going to do. Of course, you don't have a whole lot of population here, and that makes an easier factor for dealing with that. But Canada is an example of that. Nigeria. Nigeria is as my friend Linda likes to say, a perfect example of all of these challenges to sovereignty and all these aspects that could happen for devolution. Nigeria has all of these, and they also have a way of how to get through it and manage it. All right, so Nigeria has multiple situations that apply to, mostly political situations that apply to their threat to sovereignty. In the north, in this region of the north, they have this conflict over land and water between nomadic herdsmen and farmers, and this leads to skirmishes every once in a while. They have attackers who are coming in from neighboring countries and attacking small villages. Nobody knows why, but they just are. You have conflicts between the army in the north, up here in this region. We have conflicts between the army and Shia populations, and there's no answer as to what causes the conflicts, because there's nobody who's in charge of the reason the conflict happened. And so this is causing problems for the Nigerian government. There's boundary conflicts down here in this southeastern area between the different populations. Then on top of that, you have economic disruptions over here in the Delta region from groups that are attacking pipelines and oil distribution sites. And then if that's not enough, up here in this corner where it's blue, you can see it's all outlined over here, you have the area that the Boko Haram keep trying to run and control as part of the Islamic State of West Africa. And we've heard about those in the news, but they're trying to make this an Islamic state. All right, so that was Nigeria. Sudan is another one where we look at the differences between the North and South. And these are cultural, and these are also economic. These are also going to be environmental induced issues as well. You have the Arab North and the African South in reference to the cultural history of the people. The North is Muslim and the South is animist and Christian. After South Sudan was separated off for the African animist Christian population, famine sets in, another civil war sets in. I'm really condensing all of this, but the point was that all of these issues here became challenges for both the South Sudanese government as well as the area of North Sudan. All right, so what happened in Russia with the devolution of the state, the government itself, also presented a challenge to political sovereignty. So here we go back to 1989, the late 1980s, where Poland and Czechoslovakia and Hungary, a couple other states that were satellite states, wanted to break their economic relationship with the Soviet Union and trade with the rest of the world in order to bring up their own development. And then the Baltic countries set in to want to do that. That would be Estonia and Latvia, particularly, that tried to do this. And then Lithuania as well will be encouraged to. And they wanted to not be tied to the Soviet Union anymore. And there was just a series of events that led to December 25th of 1989, when Mikhail Gorbachev will formally hand over. He will resign as the head of the Soviet Union and hand over the power to Boris Yeltsin. And then the following day, on December 26th, the Supreme Soviet will meet. That's kind of like, think about the whole concept of Congress. The Supreme Soviet met, and they divided up what was the former Soviet Union and resigned. Okay, so what was the Soviet Union before, which is in this picture over here from 1984, where all of these were Soviet socialist republics, and they made up the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. This will all be dissolved on December 26th of 1989. And what will come out of it is Russia and the Commonwealth of Independent States. So it's the easy way of doing that, understanding it is, it's all of the former republics except for the Baltic states of Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. So all the rest belong to the Commonwealth of Independent States. And their borders didn't change, except for now the Crimea belongs to Russia. Okay, did we get all that? I guess y'all can play it backwards. All right, so we have another way that we also interfere with a state sovereignty, and sorry, that's how it happens, or how is it carried out. And one of the ways it's carried out today is through technology. Through your cell phone, you can send out messages and hurry up and tell everyone where to show up for a party, tell everyone where to show up for some event that's happening. You know, that's really quick. Well, the same thing is happening here when we have challenges to state authorities. People are able to crowdsource everyone right away, a lot of people right away, and bring attention to it. So the internet and cell phone connectivity has really facilitated quickly getting responses from people in remote areas of some countries in order to rally for their causes. And so we cannot forget this role of technology in contributing to the devolution of a state. And I thought this was a real interesting graphic image here, because this was done as the Internet Census of 2012. And what happened here, this is every time a computer or cell phone pings, and it is recorded, and in this census that was done. That's in 2012, and as one of my students who saw this earlier pointed out, look at the empty spaces. Try to come up with reasons why you have empty spaces. And he was pointing out here this area, the DAR, Rwanda, Burundi, but this is 2012. And if we look at connectivity in Africa now, in 2018, we've gone from 4% to 24% who now have internet connections and social media connections. So actually, access to the global world through an electronic device is rapidly increasing in both Asia and in Africa. All right, so and here's the leading social media networks by each country. This region of sub-Saharan Africa, and then also portions of the Middle East, are not clearly open because, well, problems over here, but there's no leading social media one, or the data wasn't available. All right, supranational organizations is also part of this, and supranational organizations also help to potentially cause problems or solve problems. It depends on how you look at that, but we need to run through these. The idea is that their cooperation helps to resolve conflict, and that's how we hope that it actually happens. So the first one of them that we want to look at is the United Nations, and this is 193 members, founded in 1945, who make it up today. Most of you are familiar. If you're in Model UN, you got it. There's 6 different main operations, and then there's all these other development and human rights and all kinds of branches that come under the auspices of the United Nations. Its mission, which I think is the important part to get out of these different supranational organizations, is what is their purpose. And so the purpose of the United Nations is to preserve peace and security. You can read through these: attain sustainable development, seek disarmament, end terrorism, provide for humanitarian health emergencies, promote gender equality, and promote food security. So the United Nations, 193 members, almost but not all of the world's countries. Next is followed with NATO. Now, NATO is the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and this was originally a military operation or a military alliance to counter the Soviet-backed military alliance, which was actually called Comecon. I know everyone's going to laugh. You think it's a cartoon convention, but it's not. But this is a 30-member organization of North American and European states, and you can see which ones they are. And their purpose today is actually for collective defense, collective defense from devolution in their countries or threats to their sovereignty. And so the NATO states will be involved in peacekeeping efforts. And also if there's a big disaster, sometimes they're called in to help as well. All right, so the European Union is a different type of supranational organization. This is an economic association. You have 27 member countries, and know that this is very accurate because as of February 2020, the UK no longer belongs to it, and that's a whole nother issue. But the purpose of the European Union was to create a collective or group of countries to better their position in the economic market. And that's exactly what they did. So 19 of them use the euro as a form of currency. They have a standard legal system. If you, 26 countries belong to the Schengen area, and the Schengen area allows you to travel in and out without having to produce passports and travel documents. So it's like a transparent border kind of thing. So it makes movement and accessibility a lot freer. Initially, might want to kind of keep in mind, European Union was established in 1992 as this economic organization under the Maastricht Treaty, and then revised again in 2009 with the Lisbon Treaty. So this is an economic, initially an economic organization, standard legal system. There's certain things that can be imported and exported. There's things that we don't agree with here, particularly food products that they won't take. ASEAN. ASEAN is the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, and it's a lot like the EU, but it was designed to promote economic stability and peace and collaboration and improve the overall economic development of your Southeast Asian countries, all the ones in yellow. I'm going to let you challenge yourself to identify them. Don't forget Brunei, it's right there. And don't forget Singapore. Okay, all right. So, but this was designed to improve the economic, social, cultural development of Southeast Asia. All right, the Arctic Council, but you don't hear much about the Arctic Council unless you're up there in Alaska. I know who's up there, Jody, in Alaska. All right, so the Arctic Council was designed, the countries that are part of the Arctic Council in blue, all right? And then you also have some permanent participants, some other members that are also part of this organization where their whole focus is literally this Arctic region. And they look at preserving the Arctic indigenous communities, sustainable development of the area, the effect of climate change on this area, and environmental protection, which is going to include not just the residents, but also the polar bears and the Arctic foxes, and the caribou, and life in general as it is affected by this Arctic common region, okay? And the African Union. The African Union, much like the EU and ASEAN, was designed to promote economic development, protect sovereignty, international cooperation. That was the intention of it. Sudan's been removed from it, by the way. But this was formed after the colonial powers pulled out, and the goal at the time when it was formed, it was to recover as an independent set of countries that could survive on their own, and also to end apartheid.